Well, happy Liberation Day. President Trump had a press conference today. He was very excited. He said this is going to be an end to foreign nations taking advantage of the United States of America. Let's just watch a short clip of this press conference.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
Well, we're going to dive into this a little bit more. You know, the stock market's been a little bit crazy because I'm not sure if they understand the end goal, what President Trump is trying to establish. He's trying to establish or reestablish manufacturing in the United States of America. Here with me today is Steve Beeman. He is a financial expert and an investment analyst. Welcome to the show, Steve.
It's a pleasure to be on with you.
So, we're doing these tariffs, and a lot of people didn't realize that the United States, for years, for decades, have had tariffs imposed on us. And I just want to name a few here. So from the EU, we had a 50% tariff on our American dairy. Get this from Japan, 700% tariff on American rice. 300% tariff from Canada on American butter and cheese. So is this going to level the playing field?
Well, I think you bring up an interesting point that most people don't understand. This has been going on since the post-World War II era, when we set up a system of trade that was designed and intentional to transfer American wealth to other countries to help rebuild them after the war. The problem is, of course, that we've come full circle on that. And we now house a $36 trillion debt with a $2 trillion deficit and about $1 trillion in trade deficit. So we're transferring $1 trillion of our wealth to those countries in form of their taxing us. So clearly what the administration is trying to do is say enough is enough. We've now helped you. We've come this full circle now, so we can start to ask you to pay us back a little bit of what we've given you. And it really is not retribution. It's more saying, let's level the playing field.
Yes, initially when President Trump talked about Mexico and Canada, there was a very sound reason. It was because Mexico and Canada wasn't protecting the borders, didn't care how many illegals were coming into our country. And also because the fentanyl, poisonous fentanyl that was coming into the country. And true to form, they were scared. So almost immediately, both Mexico and Canada said, we're going to send troops to the border. My goodness, border crossings are at a historic low. I'm talking in all the history that we've been recording border crossings, it's the lowest. So now Trump has moved on to steel and other things. A lot of people are very worried, Steve, about Canada. They are our neighbor, a friendly neighbor. What's your thoughts?
Well, they're our largest trading partner all out, and I think we need to have good relationships there. But let's keep in mind, what Trump is doing is negotiating. And you made a comment in the setup that the markets don't seem to understand that. Let me assure you, the markets know exactly what's going on. They're a little bit hesitant right now because they're wondering if Canada is going to play ball. We have the big stick in the United States. Everyone knows it. We are the big daddy of the economies. We've got all of that kind of the metal behind us. The question will be, will Canada come into this and play? And now it looks like as of today, they are. It does look like the Canadian Prime Minister has come out and thrown out the idea, at least, of let's drop all the tariffs between our countries. And if that's a true statement, and that really did happen, which I have reason to believe it did, then that would be the best of all worlds. We don't want to see tariffs between Canada and the US. Ultimately, we want free trade. That would give us a North American trading zone that no country or no group of countries in the world can even come close to. But I think there is a need for people to understand. There are a couple points, if you don't mind, I'd like to bring up something that really frustrates me.
Please.
You have people in this country who are always saying, let's raise taxes on companies. They're not paying their fair share. Okay, they want to raise taxes on companies. But now, when we see tariffs or taxes being raised on foreign companies, they want to scream and say that's a price increase to consumers. Well, wait, what are they doing when they raise taxes on American companies? They're raising prices to consumers. So there is this dialogue going on of people who fundamentally don't understand the nature of a tariff. And I'm hoping that the Trump administration proves itself right. Now, they have had committed to bring into the United States $3 trillion of new capital. That's an enormous number. And if you do a metric on that to look at how many jobs that can create, it's like 1,000 jobs for every $10 billion. So it's like I'd say 3 or 30 million job deal that he just brought in. It's enormous. And I think that together with trying to bring more fair trade into the program, I think you could see a boom for American industry in the next years. But it will take some adjustment here. And we could see the markets and the economy not do real well in the next 60, 90 days.
That's my feeling as well, that we're going to have a little pain before it gets better. Here's something, Steve, I've always been a tad bit concerned about. A lot of American industry went to other countries because their labor is so cheap. Here in the United States, nobody wants to work, even if they're doing widgets. They don't want to work for anything less than $20 an hour. And in some ways, I don't blame them, because the cost of living to rent an apartment is so expensive. There's been announcements from Hyundai and others that they're going to start doing manufacturing in the United States. It would still be like Hyundai, a Korean company, but using American labor. I'm trying to wrap my head around what's that going to do to costs.
Well, I think there are two big points, and you bring up, I think, the logical question about it, but 2 points I'd like to make. Number one, during the 70s and 80s, when a lot of companies moved overseas, it wasn't labor cost, it was regulations that caused them to move. The federal government has so regulated things that businesses can't afford to do business in the United States. So we can see that rolled back, and clearly the administration wants to do that. With regard to the labor rates, I think there's an interesting metric here that talks about normalizing labor rates for productivity. If we have an automated plant here in the States for Hyundai, and they're producing X number of cars per man hour, they are much more efficient than anywhere else around the world. So if you look and say our wages might be 5 times higher than anywhere else, well, that may be true. But if you normalize it, the labor cost in that car won't be any higher because we use 1/5 of the labor. And so I think it is conceivable that with our efficiencies, and we are far and away the most productive people in the world, are between automation and robotics and AI and everything else we're putting into it technologically, but also the skill of the workforce, we're able to produce things with less man hours than most countries do. And that does normalize the wages.
You know, President Trump said foreign nations will finally be paying their fair share. Here is a graph of what President Trump, he actually held it up during his press conference, and we're going to put it up on the screen now. And hopefully you can see it, not only you, Steve, but the audience. So in the first column is the tariffs that have been charged to the United States. And then the second column, the column in yellow, is the USA, and I love this, our discounted tariff. So if you just want to take a second to peruse that, you know, you could see that some countries it's pretty even, and others there's a big difference. Does anything jump out to you, Steve?
Well, I think it goes back, and these kind of charts prove the point that for generations now, we've been transferring our wealth to other countries. We've set up unfair trade to help them grow as developing economies. I think the one that really is troublesome to me more than any is China. they are still considered within our trade policies as a developing country. And nothing could be farther from the truth. They produce more electricity than we do. Their GDP will one day be bigger than ours. Now, their productivity and per capita numbers are horrendous because they're not very efficient. But I think if you look again, it's time to quit supporting China and these other countries with trade deficits. It's just time we stop. We cannot afford to transfer our children and our grandchildren's wealth to other countries anymore. And more than that, we don't need to. It's like Canada. They're very self-sufficient. They don't need our gravy train anymore. They can operate without it. So we'll hope that Trump can pull that off.
Yeah, that's the one area I get the whole scheme. I get the whole vision. I understand the end goal. But I felt we were a little easy on China. So I'm very happy you brought that up. And you think it's because of a status of a developing nation is the reason.
In many cases, in many cases, they get what's called most favored nation handling. And it's just not fair. They're not a developing country anymore. And in fact, they are our biggest geopolitical threat. And I think most people know it. So we certainly want to not transfer $200 billion a year to the Chinese economy. We want to level that out. And yes, it will cause some price increases because we're raising taxes on Chinese companies. So I want to go to the people on the, I'll say kindly, on the left who say, let's raise taxes on companies to get more taxes to the government. Well, wait a minute. We're taxing Chinese companies. How can you not be for that?
Yeah, they're against anything that President Trump wants. That's
clear.
There is
but
to it.
I think if you look at that, and again, forgive me for going on, but I could go all day on it. It just upsets me so much. That's against Americans. It's not against Trump. When they say, look, we're going to tax Apple and Microsoft and General Motors, but we're not going to tax Chinese companies, that is purely against the American people.
Well, that's the struggle of the Democrat Party for the last probably decade. They just seem to be on the wrong side of the tracks and anti-American. Well, this is really a nice little thing that Brian, I think his name is Pannebecker, has to say. He's very happy about the new tariffs. Let's watch this.
Thank you, Mr. President. I grew up just north of Detroit, Michigan, in Macomb County, known as the home of the Reagan Democrats. My first vote for president was for Ronald Reagan. I thought that was going to be the best president I ever saw in my lifetime until Donald J. Trump came along. I have watched my entire life, I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized. And Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built. And the UAW members, and I brought 20 of them with me, they're sitting right over here. We support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%. So, Mr. President, we can't thank you enough. And in 6 months or a year, we're going to begin to see the benefits. I can't wait to see what's happening 3 or 4 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
Steve, I had the biggest smile on my face while he was talking. It's very nice to hear from American citizens supporting their president, supporting the strategy, and even saying, you know, I can't wait to see what it's like in 6 months, a year. And Trump time is fast. So we may be seeing some increase in manufacturing even before that time. I know recently, actually, car purchases went up, people fearing tariffs. So the car industry has actually had a good couple of weeks.
Indeed. And I think the time horizon is right. This stuff in the short term can be very disruptive, and I think the markets are showing us that. But the markets have not said they don't believe this will happen. And the reason I say that, the market's down around 9%, which in the annuals of the markets is not a big drop off. It does that about once a year anyway. That is not saying they don't believe this will work. The market is kind of testing the waters, saying we don't know. Let's hold off here. If Trump gets a win in China, if he gets a win in the European Union, any of that's going to cause the market to go straight back up. So I think the market is going to be a fair-weathered friend on that. But to go to this person's point, in Michigan, and in this whole steel belt in the auto industry areas where you've seen these companies just run away from the United States, reduce the cost of regulation on them, bring in fresh capital, and you'll see the American worker come back strong in productivity.
Yes, I hope we live up to that American dream that we do want to work hard and be self-sufficient. There has been concern about the increase of people on welfare or government assistance. And we have to find a way to make people have that pride in making their own paycheck. That's a whole other discussion around self-worth. I think, again, I hate to say it, but the Democrat Party set it up like this is the government's role. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to pay for everything for you. When this country was first established, it was about working hard, and you can make that dream, whatever that dream is for you, just working hard, being good to your neighbor, having your family, and it'll all come into place. So I don't know how we get people back into the workforce. I think it's going to be multifactorial, but giving that people the sense of pride and the tools to be successful. Maybe some of these new manufacturing or existing manufacturing could have classes for community members, some basic skills to get back into the workforce. Any thoughts?
A whole lot of them. We could go off on this a long time too, because you have a very real dynamic in the U.S. labor force, and in fact, the global labor force changing with the advancements of technology. It is going to, we cannot stop it. It is going to eliminate an awful lot of the jobs over the next 15, 20 years. And I mean high-level jobs. Automation will replace a lot of medicine. It will replace transportation. It's going to replace these things. That's not necessarily bad, but to your point, it goes back to how does a person find self-worth when they no longer have to have a job to gain material goods? Because I think we're looking for a post-scarcity economy in the very near future, and that changes the dynamic of all of it. And so I think we need to spend the time now getting capital back into the United States, to your point, retraining people on technology and technology-related issues, and letting them experience the best of it instead of being afraid of it and having to become dystopian.
Yeah, you're right about that. During the pandemic, one of the things President Trump talked about is, my goodness, we don't even make masks or gowns or gloves. We were dependent on China, who started the pandemic. And I haven't seen it change much. I'm in the healthcare field. Everything still comes from China.
Well,
and the other
worse
thing
than
is
that, we don't produce semiconductors, and we don't produce the antiviral medicines, the antibiotics. Right. And that's the part that's going to come back to bite us.
Yes, and President Trump talks about the pharmaceutical industry and what he's going to do. Let's watch this.
On the pharma tariffs, Mr. President, you've been talking about the pharma tariffs and what to expect there. Are you going to exempt life-saving medications, or what can we expect there?
Well, we'll be announcing it soon, but we have to bring pharmaceuticals, drugs and pharmaceuticals back into our country.
And what's the rate you're looking at? 15%, 25%?
We're looking at a certain number that will be enough to get the drugs and the pharmaceutical companies bringing their product into our country.
So
we never want to have to rely on other countries for that, like we did at COVID.
Sir, on the car tariffs and just the reciprocal tariffs, a lot of countries are making gestures, including Britain, which is talked about reducing digital services. They want to make deals.
They do.
Are you in a mode, or
Well, it's possible if we can get something for the deal, but we've been taken advantage of for 40 years, maybe more, and it's just not going to happen anymore. But yeah, I'm certainly open to that.
Do you think
if we can do something where we get something for it?
Mr. President, do you plan to?
Would that happen before the tariffs are announced?
No, probably later.
Probably.
Mr. President, do you?
It's a process. Do it probably later.
So I'm happy about the pharmaceutical industry because as a healthcare provider, knowing that there's really two main players, China and India, and we should have medication right here at home. Now, Steve, there are going to be additional tariffs being announced in it's already talked about the tariffs from the EU, but Ireland looks like it's going to be hit hard. Can you explain why Ireland is going to be hit harder than the EU?
Well, let's remember back when Great Britain went through the whole Brexit thing. And so they kind of separated themselves out from the EU, and their tariff policies haven't been that bad. But we need to get Ireland has become a favored place. Businesses moving there left, right, and every other way because they have very low taxes. They have a good work rule environment. And so I think what Trump is doing is saying, I need to get these companies to stop hemorrhaging, especially in the financial sector, going up to Ireland. Let's get them back home. And I support the effort, as I've said. I think he's using a bludgeoning tool here to negotiate and get things to happen. I hope he'll be right. We kind of have indications of it right now. We don't have assurance that it absolutely will work, but we do have some indications.
I like all of President Trump's agenda, and there's a thing called midterms, and the left has been doing a great job of frightening people about these tariffs. If you had to explain to a group of people you know how nowadays people like short little, snapshot of something, what would you say, Steve?
I do a lot of work trying to empower and arm people with knowledge. And I would say to them this, we have to change something. If we don't, we will cease to have a country. $36 trillion in debt, $2 trillion deficits, $1 trillion trade deficits. We have to stop the bleeding. The tariffs are no more than an effort to balance the playing field between American companies and foreign companies. We're going to tax them just like we do American companies, and nobody seems to have a problem with that. So I think it's just a fairness issue.
You know, one thing that's kind of funny is that President Trump has not changed in his opinion. Even as a young man, listen to what he had to say about tariffs.
I think people are tired of seeing the United States ripped off. I'd make our allies pay their fair share.
The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. We're going to reclaim our wealth. This is the beginning of Liberation Day in America.
So at least we can say he's been consistent.
Indeed. That's one of the things I think it's advantageous to have a business mind in the leadership positions because they tend not to change on fundamentals. As much as people like to get political about these things, we're really not in an area here where politics matters. This is economic reality. We have to do something. We cannot transfer $1 trillion a year of our wealth to other countries anymore. We don't have it, and it's unhealthy for our kids and our grandkids. So as much as it's a scary thing, and it's a bludgeoning device, so we don't know if it's going to work like we want it to, I don't think he had a choice. As I said earlier in the program, I think we had to make a change, and this is a logical, rational way to make that change happen.
I agree with you. We couldn't just keep on keeping on and kicking the can down the road. He is the right president at the right time. And I really feel even more so in this second term, probably because Biden was so bad and the country was just taken to a Marxist, communist error that I hope we never see again, where your political opponents are jailed or they're lied about, their businesses are ruined. Like, I just don't understand this hatred towards Elon Musk in Tesla. Don't they realize that their brethren, another American citizen, is working at the Tesla dealership? They are helping make those American cars. It's just nonsensical to me. And it's so destructive to who we are as a people.
It's interesting. Actually, my next podcast is on Doge and what's actually going on there, because they're not making cuts nearly as severely as people think. Either Obama or Clinton, two Democrats, cut more people from the federal government than Doge has done. All Doge has done is pointed out the fraud in the government. Most of us commonsensically knew it was there. We're just seeing it played out. But to go back to this hatred of Elon and of Tesla, it was Governor Walz in Minnesota just joyful about the collapse in the stock price and the effect on the stock price. Well, doesn't he realize that the Minnesota public employee retirement system is heavily invested in Tesla? So what's he doing there? He's hurting the people of Minnesota. And that's why I think sometimes these ideologues lose track of who they serve. They serve the people, not their own ideological bent.
Amen. Now, you mentioned a podcast. Tell us where people can watch your podcast.
Well, we're up at the stevebeamanshow.com, and what we are is trying to do is empower people with knowledge. So it's a lot of economics, a lot of finance, a lot of talk about new technologies. I brought up in the last show, by the way, they've now created a biologic computer. This is a living thing. So it's kind of an interesting change to the dynamics of computers. So a lot going on in those areas I want people to be up to speed on. And I love the community we're building. I love talking to people when they agree or disagree. I have a lot of discussions with millennials and Gen Zs where they don't agree with me. And we have really good discussions. So I think it's important that we get back to civil dialogue in this country.
Absolutely. Look at our forefathers in the Continental Congress. They had spirited discourse, but they were able to do it without violence or attacking one another somewhat. History tells us that sometimes there was a little attacking in newspapers and other things. But
I think there was a duel.
yeah, and then there was a duel. But I agree with you, Steve, and I think it's good for young people. I'm always wanting to educate as well, and I try to look almost with a sociology hat on, observing things. And how can we talk to young people about bullying in school when they see the far left Democrats calling on destruction to Tesla, or back in the summer of hatred in 2020, calling to take to the streets, burn down the buildings, take down the monuments, and until we get what we want, we're going to do whatever we want. And it's not harming anybody if we burn a building. That's what Presley from Massachusetts said.
The school systems have failed the children in many ways. Not only can they not read or write, but they're getting a social indoctrination that is not healthy. I think parents, and we're in a bit of a post-family society where most kids now have broken families, and that's not easy on them. They're going through real challenges. They've come through COVID. A lot of them lived through the 2008 nightmare. So they've lived in a world of transition and change. And an interesting note, when I grew up, I'm a kid of the 60s and 70s. The United States was far and away the greatest economic player in the world. We had the biggest GDP. We produced more cars, steel, oil, everything. We were the big player. Today, that's not true. And so for these kids to feel some fear about where they may go or where they may not go in life is reasonable. I don't blame them. I would be nervous too. But I think if we can get back to looking at what does work, and I think it can be demonstrated that individual freedom works, I think we can get back to healthy risk in the economy for these kids and show them that the future can be bright, even though it's different than what their parents or grandparents had.
Thank you. I've certainly enjoyed having you on today, and I can't wait to watch your podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to get to know you. I know a lot of the folks that I know Mike Lindell, and they're very pleased that he's got the TV network going. It's just nice to see Chris Ruddy, who's another wonderful guy, took Newsmax public the other day. Maybe Mike Lindell will do the same someday.
I think he's considering it. Thank you, Steve.
Be well.
Well, I'm going to take a short break, and we're going to be back with a new story. You think you've heard everything about the J6ers? I have somebody who's going to add to that.
Are
Are you looking for monthly income without the risk of stocks? Here's something you won't hear on CNBC. There's actually a unique way to collect royalties directly from America's most productive oil fields. No exploring, drilling, or operational headaches. You simply collect checks month after month. The best part? You can get started with just $25 through any brokerage account. The Oxford Club's chief income strategist, Mark Lichtenfeld, breaks down what he believes is the #1 oil royalty play for 2025. Visit mariaoilboom.com now to learn more. That's right, mariaoilboom.com. Stop buying oil stocks and start collecting oil royalty checks instead.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster, and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
Welcome back. I have always been very interested in what happened on January 6, 2021. I saw this great documentary on Epic Times. Some people call it Epoch. EPOCH. And it showed me views I've never seen before. And a lot of people do not realize that 4 innocent people died that day. Ashley Babbitt was murdered by Captain Byrd, and Roseanne Boyland, I'm not sure whether she went into respiratory arrest because of the toxic gas and spray that they were spraying, but I definitely saw when she was unconscious, maybe even dead, being beaten up by a Metro police officer. And then 2 other gentlemen who were literally just standing, milling about, had all this gas thrown down on them from police officers, and 2 of them had a heart attack. It has been dispelled, long dispelled, that any police officers died that day. And there's still more stories coming out. Well, I'd like to welcome Chris Worrell to the show.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Good. How are you, Chris? So tell us your story.
Well, I'm just your local domestic terrorist that hasn't figured out how to be a terrorist. But while they did all that, they took my whole life and the lives of over 1,500 others in this country. And not just those that were indicted. Then you have the umbrella of all those people that were involved in their lives, family, friends, and others. And it's impacted tens of thousands.
Chris, were you there that day?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I was on the West Steps.
So the West Steps, because it's interesting. I had Brandon Strock on my show before, and he was telling me where he was at the Capitol. he had no idea what was going on. He got a call from some friends saying, "What is happening at the Capitol?" And where he was, it was like, "What do you mean? Nothing's going on." So on the West Steps, were people entering? Were people chaotic, worked up? Was police pushing and shoving at you?
Well, very matter of factly, I was there early that morning on the West Steps, the inauguration side. For those that don't understand, there was singing, prayers, of course, chants, "Stop the steal," you name it. But the violence didn't start until the munitions were fired onto the crowd.
Yes, and that's one of the things I saw in this Epic Times documentary, that people were basically just milling about until the officers who were in a position of power, meaning above. So you had all these people just with their flags, and from above, they started with these canisters of this really obnoxious gas. Now, Chris, we have a little clip here.
They threw flashbangs, grapefruit-sized grenades, tear gas cans, rubber bullets, pepper ball guns, fire extinguisher-sized cans of OC spray. You name it. They threw it indiscriminately at the crowd without any. There was no rule applied in how they deployed these non-lethal munitions that are heavily trained on. You don't just deploy them at people, but yet you did. And I don't remember if it was Kevin Greason or Benjamin Phillips, but one of them, I think, was one of their deaths, cause of death was from a flashbang hitting them in the chest. I believe I'm right on that. So, you have all these unarmed protesters, unless you want to consider some little 4-ounce cans of pepper spray like I had, or flagpoles, a weapon, that were there to overthrow our government, was their narrative. It's just a bunch of crap.
How important is it for you, Chris, to get the truth out? It seems like in our circles, the truth is out, but there are people that are documenting a whole different propaganda thing about you and others trying to take over the government. And it's in writing, in magazines, in papers. And I don't want to see it get into history books. How important is it to you to get the real truth out?
It's important for the future of this country, because the next time there's a raids on the American people, for whatever reason it is, in this manner, buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, because I believe it will not be a civil one.
Yeah. Did you go to jail, Chris?
I spent 1,492 days in prison, on and off, 2 years of home confinement. I got emergency released out of the DC jail in November 5th of 21 after we caught them. Basically, you could call it attempted murder, because they got caught manipulating my medical records, denied me cancer treatments. I came home with stage 3 cancer in 21, had surgeries, chemo, all this stuff for 2 years, over 2 years of an ankle monitor. I have here, I kept it as a memento. I was a danger to my community and couldn't be out, even go to doctors. And the whole time the prosecution, in every oral and written argument they made for the entire 4 years, that I faked and embellished my illnesses.
Oh, wow.
And then you take me, and then Lamberth, I gave him credit for saving my life in November 21. He then took my life, or tried to, when he gave me 120 months with no evidence. You accused me of violence, but yet you don't have a video of my violence, and yet you deleted 7 hours, 26 minutes, and 32 seconds of my body cam footage that I know existed, but you tell me it vaporized, it doesn't exist. And I wonder why that is.
It's a very scary thing, Chris, about our prosecutors in the court systems now. During COVID, we saw these beloved institutions fail us, lie, cover up things. And I mean healthcare, the CDC. And one of the things we continued to have faith in was the court systems until we saw massive fraud in the 2020 election, and no court would take up the argument. They didn't want to hear from one witness. And then the poor J6ers, you were just abused. And some of the judges, Beryl Howell in DC, just had hate and vitriol towards people who were just peacefully protesting.
And they still do. I mean, look, Lamberth had to sign, I think it was on January 9th. I can't remember what day it is. I have it here. He had to sign that and dismiss my case as moot on February 3rd. So what that means now, I've been arrested, but I haven't been charged or convicted. So you did everything you did to me, to my wife. You flashbanged my wife the morning you raided the house, and I wasn't even home. And I could unpack that, how a domestic terrorist that was have a warrant for on March 10th, you wait till the 12th to serve it, and you don't even know that your alleged domestic terrorist isn't even home and left on the 11th to go camping for 3 days. So the whole narrative is dead. Everything. Trump made it clear on, I think it was February 8th on Air Force One. Look, the people were the ones that were assaulted that day. Yeah. Did some people fight back? Absolutely. When I have a 60-year-old woman come up to me just with her hands out screaming, I can't see and I can't breathe. Yeah. And you get punched, or you reach out and you punch a 60-year-old lady in the face, and there's videos of that. For what? And you get punched in the face and you're gonna cry foul? I'm sorry, that's not how it works in this country. And just because you have a piece of silver on your chest doesn't give you any more glory or power than me.
Chris, I'm curious on your thoughts. I believe some of the Capitol Police officers lied during the J6 committee meetings. Why do you think that's so? Do you think they got paid to lie?
Look, the whole narrative is this: from the top down, from the Pentagon down through Congress, down into the District of Columbia, at all levels of alphabet soup, DC police, Park Police, they were all involved in January 6th. They claim that they didn't know January 6th was going to happen. There's too much evidence to point that that's a lie, all the way back into September of 20, where we had officers telling us in the DC jail, we started prepping this jail in September of 20, but you didn't know January 6th was going to happen. There's money in the CARES Act in the December 20 release that gave money for the preparation for January 6th in that prison, jail, I should say. And it's a gulag. It absolutely is a gulag. The way they treated us in there, they messed with our food. Everything you can imagine. There was no medical treatment. They lied on medical records. They got caught in my case, got held in contempt, and Merrick Garland did nothing with it. We knew that was going to happen.
I tell you, the whole entire Biden administration, it would be great if we had one person who had integrity, but it was his entire administration who were incompetent, hated America, and did everything wrong. I wish I could say something. What's that, dear?
With absolute intention.
Yes, I agree. I agree, because they hate America and they have this Marxist ideology. How are you feeling today, Chris? Are you better?
Well, my health is uncertain right now. Look, and my situation applies to most January 6ers. We've still been canceled from society. For the first time in my life, in 2 hours on the phone with American Express, I got denied to get put back on a card that has a flawless record of over 20 years, and I've been denied credit with no explanation. I can't get medical care because I can't get a meaningful job. to afford medical care. So we're still, look, while we're not in prison, we really don't have too much freedom.
Oh boy. I am very, very shocked and saddened to hear that. Is there, I don't know what I can do to help.
I just ask your people, look, to pick any J6er. If you want to help me, beautiful. If you want to help any J6er, there's plenty of ways to go find out who J6ers are and see who needs help. If you want to help me, I've got a Gives and Go. We all do. It's givesandgo.com/4 and Patriot support. There it is there. But look, pick a January 6er. We're near the edge of the woods, but we're not out of the woods. And today is supposed to be Liberation Day, and so us January 6ers are still waiting for liberation.
I'm not a lawyer, but are you able to sue the Justice Department?
Well, see, you would think that would be a pretty simple task, and I guess if Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino come together with the truth on January 6th, and our Congress does an actual J6 investigation and starts subpoenaing January 6ers like myself and others that were maliciously, with intent, like attempted murder on, you could call it. Why haven't we been subpoenaed? Why hasn't Senate started hearings? Why isn't anything happening? This is the biggest crime perpetrated on the United States of America and the American people. Unquestionably.
Yes, and hopefully, I thought I heard some chatter that J6 was going to be looked at. So I hope, as you do, that happens. Would you mind holding up your Give, Send, Go again, Chris?
Sure, I can.
givesendgo.com/4 Patriot support. Well, I wish you the best of luck, Chris, and I appreciate you coming on.
God bless you. Thank you for your fight.
Thank you. Geez, it's so disturbing to hear about this, and I'm sure his story is not unique. I don't know the answer to all this. There was things we saw in the 4 terrible years during the Biden administration I never thought I would see in the United States of America. The world went upside down. It seemed like lawful citizens would be targeted. And the party that said they were about diversity didn't like diversity of thought. If you weren't in lockstep with their talking points, they were going to get you. And it didn't even matter if you were a Republican, Libertarian, Independent. If you were a Democrat and you went against the talking points, they'd go after you too. And we need to clean that up. And I know President Trump and his administration has a big task because the rot is deep. We like to say, oh, it was just that top echelon that was the Marxist ideology. It runs vertical. So it's going to take some time to weed it out. But what about all these people who were wronged? What about these people who were peacefully protesting on January 6th and got all kinds of charges, felony charges, made up information about them? What happens to them? Did they get justice? Does Mayor Giuliani get justice? The only reason he was a target, and it could be multifactorial. Some people say it's because he was Trump's lawyer and there's this Trump derangement syndrome. But I actually think it was a little deeper than that. He had information about the Bidens, right? Remember, Joe Biden hadn't even announced he was going to run for president. It was about 2018 when they were really doubling down, the Democrats going after President Trump. And Giuliani was his attorney, and he was starting to follow up on the fake dossier. Where were the origins? And some intel led to Ukraine. While he was in Ukraine, that's all they wanted to talk about, is how corrupt Joe Biden was when he was vice president of the United States. Did Giuliani want that information? Did he ask for it? No. What did he do? He handed it over to Bill Barr. He didn't really want anything to do with it, but Bill Barr and the FBI sat on it. So when Biden announced, he thought it was his civic duty to bring out that information. And then, darn it, he gets the Hunter Biden laptop. Again, that repairman in Delaware gave it to the FBI a year before, had a lot of information on it, and he thought, well, if the FBI doesn't do anything about this conspiracy, this crime family, who's the number one person in our country who's a crime fighter? Yes, Rudy Giuliani. So I think the Biden, so powerful, that Democrat machine, so powerful. They said, oh my God, here is a man with so much credibility, has a career of working very well with Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians. We got to discredit him. And it was systematic. It kept going. Even so, they took his law license. This was the biggest prosecutor of our time, of the 20th century. Nowadays, prosecutors really don't try cases, right? They're, I hate to even say underlings, because they're not like underlings, but prosecutors don't really prosecute anything. Rudy Giuliani prosecuted things. He was involved in the wiretapping of the mob, everything, bringing down white collar crime, going after corrupt politicians, regardless of party. And they take away his law license to punish him because he dared say there was fraud in the 2020 election. What has our country become? Will he ever get justice? Will the J6ers get justice? I know we want to concentrate on moving forward. As President Trump said, we're going to enter a golden era of America. And I look forward to that. And I believe we can do it if we unite as a people. Why does it have to be so divided? Why can't you support President Trump in the initiatives that you have always said you wanted to do? Cut government spending. But because it's President Trump, you just want to fight against it? I don't know. If I could do something to reason with people to bring us together, I would. But I don't know. Sometimes I think it's only going to be the Lord above who can do that. But I want to talk to you about Mike Lindell and Lindell TV. So you know you can reach us a couple different ways, lindelltv.com, Roku, the Lindell TV channel. A lot of people watch us that way. And in the Midwest, there's some cable channels. But I also want to bring your attention to mypillow.com. MyPillow, as you know, Mike started that company. He was the inventor of the MyPillow. And now his employees own the company. And I hope that you can support MyPillow by buying American-made products through them, because it's supporting his employees, not just Mike. And they've taken a hit just because he has spoken up about fraud in the 2020 election. And there's a lot of great products. There's, of course, the famous pillow. There's slippers. There's robes. There's pillows. Oh, I already said that. And towels. So please take a look. And if you're birthday shopping, Christmas shopping, or you need something for yourself, look at mypillow.com. And he's always trying to pass savings on to you. And this is what I like, what we do in America. We rally around people and good products. I wouldn't want you to buy anything you didn't believe in, but I can tell you, and this is the God's honest truth, I have several of my pillow products, mainly the towels and the sheets. But every time I start to say it, I'm like, oh yeah, and I have slippers. And I bought my dad some slippers. So they're very good products. But thank you for joining me. Don't panic about the tariffs. Really, really just take it all in, do some looking up, look at Rapid Response 47 on social media. Listen to Caroline Levitt. She's out there every day trying to put the truth and transparency out there. And I hope I bring it to you. And if I didn't agree with something, I would let you know that as well. But this is a good thing to make America great again. And hopefully, as we wade through the tariffs, on both sides will be equal and reciprocal. Thank you for joining me on the Dr. Maria Show. I will see you on Friday evening. Bye-bye.